Hello, church family. Thank you for taking a few minutes to watch this video message. It's been 3 months since we were last able to open the doors of the church on Sabbath morning and welcome you into God's house for Sabbath morning worship. Now, we've been thankful for the tools that have allowed us to continue to connect through a shared online worship service, but we've missed the Christian fellowship and the sense of worshiping together with our family of faith. I'm looking forward this Sabbath, June 13, to welcoming you back into God's house. As you plan and prepare for returning to church this Sabbath morning, I want to share with you some guidelines that we will implement to create a safer environment that is welcoming and assuring to as many as possible. But before I share those guidelines with you, you'll want to remember that while we're reopening the church facility this Sabbath, we're only doing so for the 10:50 a.m. Sabbath worship service. Our Sabbath school programs will continue at home. This coming Sabbath, June 13, our online adult Sabbath school discussion will begin at 9:30 a.m. and conclude at 10:15 a.m. That will provide you with the opportunity to stay home and view that Sabbath school discussion, and then have a half hour or 40 minutes to make your way here to the church for the in-person Sabbath worship service beginning at 10:50 a.m. Our children's and youth Sabbath school divisions do not yet have plans to reopen at this time, so you'll want to continue to provide a Sabbath school experience for your kids at home. I encourage you to check out a list of resources included in the weekly church update email. Now, as I share these guidelines with you as we prepare to meet again on Sabbath morning, we do so hoping that we're at the tail end of this COVID-19 pandemic. We recognize that there are a myriad views on what precautions are and are not necessary for a public gathering such as ours on Sabbath morning. Our goal is to have guidelines that create a safer environment that is welcoming and assuring for as many people as possible. In 1, 2, 3, or 4 months from now, as we look back at these first few Sabbaths of worshiping again together in person, I hope we can reflect back and say, you know what? We were probably more cautious than we needed to be, but that's okay. That is much preferable to looking back and saying, wow, if only we had been a little bit more cautious. If only we had taken a few more precautions. Taking sensible steps that are precautions to prevent the spread or the potential spread of illness is not a sign of a lack of trust in God. Rather, it's an expression of love and concern for others. In John chapter 13, Jesus said, "This is the way that people will know that you're my disciples, because you have love one for another." As you prepare for returning to church this Sabbath, please plan on following these guidelines. Please do not return to church this Sabbath if you are sick or have any of these following symptoms that are associated with COVID-19. Fever or chills, cough, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, fatigue, muscle or body aches, new loss of taste or smell, sore throat, congestion or runny nose, nausea or vomiting, diarrhea. Please do not come to church if you have been in contact within the past 2 weeks with someone who has COVID-19. I encourage you to continue to connect with your church family from home by watching the worship service on our YouTube channel. As you do plan for returning to church this Sabbath, June 13, I invite you to plan to implement these guidelines. Please wear a CDC-approved mask at church. This includes multi-layer homemade masks. Please practice social distancing while at church. Maintain at least 6 feet between you and others who are not of your household. please consider staying at home if you are at a higher risk for severe illness due to an underlying health condition, age, or other factors. We want you here on Sabbath morning, but we want you to be safe. Please review these guidelines and prayerfully consider whether or not you're comfortable returning to God's house for Sabbath worship this coming Sabbath. You may be wondering, what will my experience be like as I return to church this coming Sabbath for the worship service? As you approach the church entrance, you'll see signs outlining the guidelines I've just shared with you. As you enter the lobby, our greeter team will welcome you to God's house while maintaining a 6-foot social distance. If you don't have a mask, they'll direct you to a table where you can pick up a disposable mask. You'll find hand sanitizer at accessible locations throughout the church. As you enter the sanctuary, you'll have an opportunity to pick a place to sit in God's house while still maintaining a 6-foot social distance between you and other families. During the worship service, you'll notice that instead of passing the offering plate, you'll be invited to return God's tithes and offerings in boxes placed in the foyer. We'll have a children's story, but instead of inviting kids to go through the church picking up those dollars for the manna offering, we'll encourage our kids to stay with their families for the children's story. After the worship service, our deacons will dismiss you, encouraging you to immediately exit the church. If you'd like to visit and socialize, we will be encouraging you to do that outside rather than inside the lobby. Some of these guidelines may seem, inconvenient, but I appreciate your willingness to experience some level of inconvenience so that we can ensure we're not imperiling the health of others. As I mentioned earlier, we want to look back at these first few weeks of re-entering God's house on Sabbath morning and think we have done more than was necessary. We've been more cautious than we had to be. But we'd prefer that reflection rather than looking back and thinking if only we'd been more careful. In the weeks to come, we anticipate easing these guidelines, and we look forward to one day soon being able to worship on Sabbath morning in much the way that we've been accustomed to doing so in the past. Please reach out to me if you have any questions or comments. And I look forward to seeing you this Sabbath in God's house.